Hi, hello. Vinny and Dragon here, and welcome to another video. Today, I wanted to bring up an interesting conversation, and that was context in Pokemon. And I feel like a lot of people, specifically more younger, less experienced casual fans, may have context be their absolute menace when it comes to entering competitive Pokemon. Now, I've been playing Pokemon for a long time, and one of the things that I have learned is that stats and damage calcs and just clicking the strong buttons doesn't exactly mean everything. And I wanted to take this opportunity to look at this tweet, which is kind of popping off on Twitter, and kind of provide my thoughts about it. This is a tweet from the one and only NumbNexus, who says, Mega Pokemon are returning this year, but don't let that fool you into thinking this Pokemon is strong. And it's a picture of Mega Beedrill. And, I mean, personally, I do agree. Mega Beedrill isn't really worth running on any teams. Think about the sunk cost fallacy with running one Mega, then suddenly you can't run the other ones. In VGC and in singles you have to worry about hazards and choice scarfers, which Mega Beedrill can't deal with. In VGC, it just doesn't hit as hard enough, fast enough, and it's just so unbelievably frail. It's just not really worth it. However, what shouldn't really be a hot take became a hot take. There's lots of people on Twitter saying things against this. Now, don't get me wrong, some of this is memes, like this got a Deku versus Mega Beedrill. Some of these people know that Mega Beedrill is bad. Here's a Pierce the Heavens meme. I do not stall, I do not hazard, I do not balance, I min-max. You know, some people get the joke. But there are people who genuinely think that Mega Beedrill is a usable Pokemon, and I want to sort of reiterate as to why it isn't, for people who may not be as experienced with competitive Pokemon. This person, whose name I will blur out in the video as they are very wrong, but I don't want them to be roasted, said that Mega Beedrill was Zacian before Zacian. Just has useless special power. I don't know what else to tell you. I don't know if this person played VGC in 2018 and consecutive formats like that. If they did, they would see that this thing is nowhere near Zacian. But for the sake of the argument of the video, let's analyze why stats don't mean everything, and Zacian is a far better Pokemon than Mega Beedrill. Now, if we look at the stats here, they're actually very similar. They have the same attack stat, and Zacian is only 3 points faster. And with Zacian Crowned, which is the more accurate representation because it's holding an item, so you don't have to worry about the item clause and Zacian can hit harder with an item. I wanted to equalize it and make it fair. Base Zacian doesn't have to hold one, and people do run base Zacian in VGC sometimes, but I just wanted to use Zacian Crown for this example because it has the most similar stats, and it has the lack of an item, so we don't have to factor that into the context. Now, for my more experienced competitive Pokemon players, there's probably 100 things jumping out at you as to why Zacian is so much better than Mega Beedrill. However, I just want to take it slow, so to think about, in a thought experiment, why just having strong offenses, strong stats, doesn't necessarily mean everything in the grand context. Now, Mega Beedrill's typing, Bug Poison, is bad. Just straight up. It is horrendously bad. Especially for a frail physical attacker, because there's so many steel types that just love sitting in front of you. You have absolutely no resistances. You're weak to rocks, which is terrible in a Pokemon that cannot run heavy duty boots. You are weak to ground. It is just absolutely devastating that Mega Beedrill has this typing. Now, if this was maybe, I don't know, Fairy Steel, then perhaps Beedrill could have gotten some use back in the day. But unfortunately it isn't, so we have to knock the typing thing out of the equation. But you may be asking, why is the type combination of Fairy Steel so much better than Bug Poison? Well, it's quite simple. Bug is one of the worst types in the game, Poison is one of the worst types in the game, and they don't really have synergy. Fairy is one of the best types in the game, if not the best type in the game, and Steel is one of the best types in the game, if not the second best type in the game. And they have absolutely perfect synergy. Zacian's Crown's typing is so much better defensively oriented. You're not taking massive damage from switching into Stealth Rocks, you're not taking massive damage from just a random ground move. We'll get to that later, why he doesn't, even though they're both weak to ground. You have access to being able to switch into Strong Draco Meteors. I mean, Zacian Crown's type, both offensively and defensively, has so much more to value than Beedrill's. There's a reason why one of the only potent offensive bug types just completely ignores its type with Tinted Lens. I mean, Bug is just not a strong physical type. And then Poison is also not great offensively. It's more useful defensively in getting rid of toxic spikes and being able to be immune to toxic. That's more the benefits of Poison, and Beedrill just doesn't use those at all. However, okay, Mega Beedrill may have a worse typing, but adaptability is a pretty good ability, right? Well, yes, but it's not Intrepid Sword. And keep in mind, Zacian's pre-nerf Intrepid Sword is one of the greatest abilities of all time, but let's not get into that. Intrepid Sword is ridiculous. I mean, Intrepid Sword gives you a +1 boost no matter what. Every time you switch in, there's no clause. You can click any of your coverage moves and get the 1.5 boost. Meanwhile, Beedrill's adaptability is specifically locked to its 2 stab types, which we discussed before, are not very good. But okay, speaking of those coverage moves, let's look at Zacian's. I mean, Zacian has access to strong steel and fairy moves because it has those types. However, it also has access to Crunch, Close Combat, Fire Fang, Ice Fang. It has access to Moonblast for some reason. It has Psychic Fang, Sacred Sword, any possible Trailblaze, Wild Charge. They gave this thing Trailblaze in Gen 9. I didn't even know that. I mean, just absolute menace. And then you even have some of these usually less useful moves that it could still potentially run. I mean, this ability to just completely have all this coverage for Zacian Crown is absolutely monumental. And let's take a look at Beedrill's coverage. Acrobatics, which you can't click because you're a Mega. Brick Break, which is just not Sacred Sword. Drill Run, which is a pretty good move to have, all things considered, because of all the steel types that wall you. And then Knockoff is great. Outrage, you're not really going to be clicking that much. You have your strong Poison move here with Poison Jab. Pursuit, which this is Natdex when we get into Gen 9, when Mega Beedrill will be added back into Paldea. It's very likely that they won't have Pursuit. It's also very likely they won't have Knockoff either. But let's just assume Beedrill gets lucky and gets to keep it. Then you have access to Sludge Bomb, which it's never clicking because look at its special attack stat, it doesn't do anything. Throat Chop, then you have access to your strong Bug moves, U-Turn and X-Scissor. And I also want to highlight a usually useless move here because Fell Stinger is absolutely one of this Pokemon's best moves, but Showdown is weird about what's usually useless and what's not. Fell Stinger has the potential to raise the user's attack stat by 3 stages if this move is the one that KOs a target. It's actually a very strong setup move, as once you get the kill with it, you're just instantly one-shotting everything. I mean, it's pretty strong. However, if you were paying attention, I mean, Zacian has pretty much good coverage moves for all of the things that wall it. I mean, there's a reason why they were using Skeledirge and Ubers. It's because Zacian just completely breaks any of its usual defensive walls. Meanwhile, Beedrill is stuck clicking Drill Run and hoping for the best. Oh, but Beedrill has good utility, right? I mean, if you were looking, you saw Defog, you saw access to Roost, Tailwind, Toxic Spikes. Yes, Beedrill has all of these things, but if you think about the context of when you're using Mega Beedrill, you realize that it all falls apart, because you are never living one turn with Mega Beedrill on the field. Mega Beedrill cannot be a reliable hazard clear, because even though it has Defog, it takes about 25% from a single switch in to any hazard stacking team. It cannot click Roost, because once you click Roost, you're back to full HP, and then most things can one-shot you from full HP, so it isn't even really worth it. And then you have its other moves like Tailwind, Toxic Spikes, which again, it just really does not have the sustainability for. Zacian, while it lacks these coverage moves, doesn't really need to have them. I mean, Zacian has 4 offensive moves that it just clicks and one-shots everything. It doesn't need to pretend that it wants to set up Toxic Spikes. I mean, you're never clicking anything else with Zacian. Even if this thing had spikes, which would probably make it 100% better in singles, I don't think it really changes the math on anything. Well, okay, so context changes the moves and it changes the ability and the typing, but, well, what about the stats? Well, the stats are also in Zacian's favor too. I mean, the thing that started this video was looking at Beedrill's 150 attack stat and assuming it would be as good as Zacian. but you have to look at every other stat. There is a big difference between a steel type with 115 in both special defense and defense, and then a bug type with 40 defense and 80 special defense. Practically, they're incomparable. Zacian, unless it is hit by a wall breaker, will not die in one hit. To any defensive Pokemon looking to just click moves on it, I mentioned Skeledirge previously because that was a wall to this thing in Gen 9 OU for a long time. Skeledirge actually does not one-shot this thing with Torch Song, and in fact, I doubt it two-shots this thing. I mean, this thing is absolutely surprisingly bulky for its type. I mean, for its type of Pokemon being the ultimate wall breaker of physical attack, it's kind of a better defensive Pokemon than Zamazenta was in Gen 8. And then you compare that with Mega Beedrill, who has the defense of a piece of paper. And then finally, the last part about context I want to talk about is the surrounding metagame. One cool fact of the matter is that Pokemon is not played in a vacuum. Now, you may think that, well, obviously, what do you mean? Pokemon are judged in a vacuum. They aren't played in a vacuum, though. Yes, and that is why certain Pokemon look better than they actually end up being. One of my favorite instances of this is current day Groudon. Now, Groudon in a vacuum should still be successful in Gen 9. However, if we look at Groudon's usage stats on Pikalytics, you'll see something surprisingly shocking. It only has 6.15%. I mean, look at these stats. Think about the ability. Look at these moves. It has all the context we were previously talking about why a certain Pokemon is bad. And pure ground type, while it isn't Zacian's typing, is still really, really good. So why is Groudon floundering? It's because of the context of the format. If you look at all of the top Pokemon for VGC for this current metagame, you'll see exactly why. Incineroar completely shuts it down with Parting Shot Intimidate. Urshifu Rapid Strike, if we're not in the sun, can easily break this thing. Miraidon, while it is a ground type that helps set up the sun, it can potentially be a Miraidon answer. If you get hit by a Choice Specs Draco Meteor, you're kinda screwed. Calyrex Shadow, it doesn't really have any particular interaction with. I feel like that's just simple. But Rillaboom, guess who gets hit super effectively, and guess who Rillaboom can tank? Groudon. Calyrex Ice. Calyrex Ice can actually break Groudon. Despite Groudon's actually phenomenal physical defense, Calyrex Ice is just that guy. And then you have some more lesser used Pokemon that absolutely tear this thing. I mean, Amoonguss is fine, it can live hits. Then you have Kyogre, you have Pow. What I mean to say when I talk about the format is that Groudon is really, really good. He just has a terrible matchup into the other good Pokemon of the metagame, which inherently makes him bad. That little interaction is why Groudon in current VGC metagame is worse than Murkrow was at the start of the generation. Murkrow is what we like to call a bit of the inverse of our context issue, because Murkrow actually had phenomenal matchups into all of the greatest Pokemon of the current metagame at the time. It had access to Prankster Tailwind, it had access to a ton of utility moves, and with an Eviolite, was decent enough bulky to help stop a lot of the threats at the time. Now obviously when things like Iron Bundle and Fluttermane came out, they eclipsed it. However, that's not the point. What we're talking about is context. Pokemon metagames are not in a bubble. They evolve, they adapt, and Pokemon exist to counter other Pokemon. You're not playing the game against the computer looking for the highest damage calc number. You're playing the game to win, to eliminate the Pokemon that your opponent choose. Overall, when you're building your teams for VGC 2026, I want you to use your brain, think critically, and use context. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys. I really appreciate the love the channel has been seeing recently. Please make sure to like and subscribe, as I make competitive content like this all the time, as well as just various discussions. And comment down below if you think I was wrong about something. I mean, who knows, maybe this video will age terribly when Mega Beedrill is a world champion. Overall though, please be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out.